Well, welcome. Tonight we continue meeting the candidates. For all of you that haven't watched the show, I'll say what I always do. I will never ask you to vote for a specific candidate, not my place, but I'll beg you to get to know the candidates, whether you're one of the six who'll watch them here, or Maria Marias' mother down at the Senior Center. Obrigado por estar a olhar o nosso show. Or just people who are interested in who's going to lead Milford. If you want to know who's going to be watching the town when it snows, when it ices, who's going to be the main decision maker at paving roads, then you want to meet the highway surveyors. So again, thank you for joining, and I hope that you'll get to know these candidates. This show, the Town Criers show, going down to the Senior Center, there's ample time to get to know the people, not just from newspaper ads, but to actually get to know them, and then decide who you like best. So let's start with an introduction.
Hi, I'm Scott Crisafulli. I'm presently the highway surveyor for the town of Milford. Born and raised in Milford. I have two children. Anthony, he's 21, he's at Assumption College, and Adriana, 17, and she's actually currently in Italy. An exchange student.
What a nice, hey, wait a minute, I don't get this. When we were kids, we got to go to Bellingham, maybe Franklin.
She went to Portugal too. So my wife's name is Laura Ducarral, also born and raised in Milford. Both of us have been together since freshman year of high school, and born and raised in this town and educated in this town and still in this town.
Well, the Dukes, what was number 19 in the Heights?
19.
You know, the mom and dad and Mr. and Mrs. Ducarral were 19, and then eventually Joe Duke went to 21.
Yep.
So it's a family we know.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
So I start the show and I end the show with always the same question. Scotty, I'm from Milford. Why should I vote for you?
Well, I've been an employee for the town for 30 years, 3 or 4 part-time, and the rest of my time I spent at the highway department as a worker from the ground up. I became the working foreman there, or the general foreman there, for 3 or 4 years, and then I became the highway surveyor. I was appointed to the job by Shelley LeClaire, and been doing the job since. So I've been there 14 and a half years as the highway surveyor. I've brought that highway department to a new level to the times of today. Between stormwater and technology and everything else we deal with, it was time to bring it to a new level. The amount of work we do now and the projects we do are far above what was ever done when I started there. It was very minimal amount of money, and Chapter 90 was low. We didn't fix as many roads. We did 1 road a year. Now we do anywhere from 5 to 10 a year.
What is Chapter 90? Because a lot of people don't know.
Chapter 90 is money the state gives us to do road repairs. There is usually the state has $300 million put aside for towns to fix streets. Every year they give about $200 million. They don't give us the full 300. We have fought for that for years through Mass Highway Association and going to the meetings at the State House and trying to get our money, and they don't release it. I'm not sure where the money goes. So we lose about $100 million a year, which does not help us in any way. We could use the money. This year they did kick in another, I think we got another 40,000, 45,000 on top of what we normally get. So we're around 900,000 this year in state funding for roads. But besides all that, accountability is number one. Always accountable for everything we do down there. My commitment to this town, I've been here working for the town for 30 years. I've never left this town in 30 years. My commitment to other parts of the town, the Transportation Committee, I've been on that since it started. Not a big committee, but we oversee the transportation, the bus system basically. Downtown Decoration Committee. I was that guy who, when I drove through town when I was a kid with my parents and saw the lights and saw the, Christmas, I loved it. We lost that over the years. That went away, and we couldn't get anybody to do that. I got interested in doing it, and with the help of actually citizens of Milford, we got together and we started a committee to do it. So we do the decorating in the wintertime, and we change the banners and put the flags out, and it's a pretty, I don't want to say tough thing, but it takes a lot of time to keep that stuff going. But I've taken that into my hands, and we've done it all this time. And, you know, anything we can do to make the town better, obviously we do. So my integrity, I mean, you got to have integrity to be here. You have to say what you're going to do and do what you say. And that's number one. And besides that, number one is taxpayers' money. Everything we do is taxpayers' money, and we know that. And if there's a way around doing something and finding a better way to do it with spending less money, obviously we do it. You know, from leaf pickup to the way we bought trucks this time around, and to the way we buy salt, the way we clear snow, and everything we do is efficient as we can possibly do it. But yet we have to offer the same service. And I know you like to talk leads, but we'll talk about it for a second, because this year was a bad leave year. Not bad because we can't do it, not bad because the system doesn't work, but bad because of the weather. And that's the only thing we don't control in that situation. So, you know, I always have that drive to do more, to bring us a step above, to keep up with technology of today. We have a full GIS system there now. We know where everybody is. We know all our outside contractors, minute by minute, where they are, what they're doing. So when you call there and you know, your plow hasn't been on my street, your plow has been on the street, and we can tell you how many times and exactly what time. So,
Well, a lot of that, though, when it's snowing 2 inches an hour, you know, I can see Grandma looks out and says, the street's got a couple inches of snow, they haven't plowed it. Well, that was 2 hours ago.
yeah.
So, I mean, you got to feel for the people who don't understand how quick snow builds up when it's coming down 1 inch, 2 inches an hour.
Right.
So they assume that.
Yeah, and it doesn't, it could take us 2 to 3 hours to plow your area or your route one time. So you may not see the plow for 2 hours, 3 hours sometimes, depending on how much snow. But we know internally who's been there and if they've been there. If they haven't been there, we know to send them there, you know. We track them, they're not leaving routes, they're punching in. The way the system works is they get to their route, it automatically punches them onto the clock. So they don't come to the highway department, punch a clock, and then drive to the route and get paid.
So you're not paying them to go back
No.
to the other end of
They
town
drive
anymore.
out of the route. If they want to get their coffee or they leave us and don't tell us they're leaving, they get punched out and they don't get paid. So we've saved some money that way. We've lessened the amount of outside contractors, and that's a big thing because they're getting $75 to $160 an hour depending on what kind of equipment it is. So when I started, I think we're at 67 outside contractors, and we're down to about 52 right now.
Well, you know, one of the things people don't understand is they say, Scotty, is this your son that you're paying $170 an hour to? How do you pay so much money for just somebody to shovel snow?
The highest paid vehicle is a front end loader with a 16-foot pusher box. You're getting a machine that can do the work of 3 machines with that pusher box on it. And where we utilize that is the schools. The schools are very important to get done quickly. So if we get a snowstorm and it's 2 in the morning and we know we want to get schools open, we need to clean all those parking lots. So that is where the big machines are that get paid the money. Absolutely, for the safety.
But it's not, you're not paying $170 for a guy to drive a piece of equipment. You're paying, you know, when somebody has a pickup truck, you're paying for their equipment too.
Exactly. So you're paying for a front end loader, a huge piece of equipment, a giant pusher box on the front of it, which is a huge plow that can do 16 feet at a pass. And you're paying, well, we're not paying the operator, but the company's paying their operator. And it's prevailing wage, so they're not, you know, not working for free. It costs them money.
But even the people with the small trucks, you know, the pickup trucks and all you see, you're paying a fixed fee, right? If the truck transmission dies, that doesn't come back on Milford, right?
No, they get punched out and that's the end of that. I mean, we do, you get a big storm, you have breakdowns, you have contractors breakdown, they blow a hose on a plow. You know, we're not willing to, no, you got to go for the night. We need them. So if we can fix something fairly quick and get them back on the road, we'll do it. Something major, we can't do it. We wouldn't touch it, but we have to keep them on the road. We need them out there. There's just no way around it.
But I guess the point was, when you're paying somebody that kind of money, it's for their equipment too.
Oh, yeah, yep. Yeah,
Yeah.
they're paying insurance, they're paying drivers, they're paying fuel, they're paying their maintenance. So in the end of the day, they do not make a lot of money. It's what they call, there's a name for it. I forget. They all have a name for it, but so it's just not easy money. That's at the end of the day.
Well, no, I would imagine when those truck blow a transmission or the plow breaks, it's not cheap to fix.
No, you blow a transmission, it's $2,500, and you're making probably $600-700 a snowstorm. You know, it's tough. It's blood money. That's what I was trying to say. But it's blood money. You know, so we've done a lot of different things to make it more efficient for the town, price-wise. We belong to a salt consortium. I've had that question a million times, but we belong to a salt consortium with the town of Framingham. There are 9 towns involved, all western Mass, west of Boston, I should say, Framingham and surrounding towns. We buy salt fairly cheap. I think we're paying $46 a ton this year. It seems to have dropped. But also a couple of years ago, we bought that tractor
I was
trailer.
going to say, we bought you a big toy to
Yes.
haul this.
So that's been working. That's we haul maybe 50% of our salt now. So we're around $55,000 we've saved already in salt in 2 years. So the truck will pay for itself. The truck is used daily. I mean, we have found things to use it for that, you know, helped us a lot. You know,
leaves?
hauling material, hauling leaves. We do haul leaves with it. We stockpile one end of town, then we have to haul them to the leaf dump.
Now, how do you keep, I mean, we've all run into corrosion due to salt. When you're carrying around how many tons of pure salt, doesn't that eat the truck?
It does. It absolutely does. You have to keep the trucks clean. You have to just make sure that you empty them out and clean them. And that's the biggest problem we have maintenance-wise is rust, always. We have trucks, the frames rot. You know, I think in the 15 years I've been in the highway state, or 14 years, we have probably replaced 4 frames on trucks because it's premature to get rid of the truck. So you got to weigh that out. Do we spend the 10 grand and fix the frame, or do we get rid of the truck? So
Yeah, but that truck, 160,
yes, but you do the frame now, and then you're doing the other frame the following year, then the engine's gone. It's just one thing after another. Maintenance on trucks is extremely expensive, and it's
now,
not getting
over
any
the
cheaper.
years, you've come into the FinCom, and you talk about all these different, I mean, salt to me is sodium chloride. And then, but you come in with liquid salt, brine salt, dog salt, cat salt, I mean.
Calcium, potassium, magnesium, they all rot stuff. They all rot a different metal. We found that out over the years. Calcium rots everything. It's ruthless. Salt, yes, not as bad as calcium. Potassium, we've only tried a few times. We didn't like the outcome. We didn't like how it worked. It just didn't
But what's
solve
the
our problem.
difference? When I think of calcium as a divalent ion, it's going to be hungry.
Yeah.
Sodium is a mono. But from a practical point of view, what's the difference that gets you to change from one type of salt to the next to the next?
You always want to make sure you can melt ice at 0 degrees. Sodium will not do that. It won't melt in 0 degrees. It's pretty much useless. Calcium will. Calcium is probably gets the lowest temperature out of all of them. So our typical mix in the truck that we've been using the last couple of years seems to work is we have sodium on the truck, salt, granular salt. We have a spray system on board that sprays the salt as it comes out of the truck, and that's a mixture of calcium and the secret mix that they don't tell us from the company we buy our liquid from. It's actually a compost-based material. I mean, there's all kinds of materials they mix in with it that actually help melt ice, but I mean, we've used byproducts to beer and beet juice. We haven't tried beet juice, but I've read about it, and a good friend of mine uses it, and I actually saw him talking about it on TV, Kevin Collins, but he uses it in his
Purple
system.
beet juice?
It's actually clear, and that
Oh.
was the big question. Is it red or is it purple? No,
I was
it's
going to
clear.
say, you come by the yard and
Um,
spray purple juice
Yeah,
all over it.
So we tried them, but the one we use now, the drivers like it because it actually foams up. You can see it on the road. It foams. It's brown, but it foams up. So when they really hit it hard in the intersection, they drive back and it's all foam and there's no more ice. it's called Safe Melt, so it's a brand name. They don't tell you the actual ingredients. They do tell you the important stuff like the calcium. It's 30% calcium, but it's better than putting 100% calcium. You know what I mean? It's a lot less expensive. So,
Well, I mean, when you talk about salt, one of the most popular things you do is that little trough of salt and dirt mix.
sand.
Sand.
Proper word, sand.
I remember when I was a kid, you drive in to the salt barn, and they'd be
Yeah.
yelling at you, and you say, wait a minute, I paid for that salt, I
Yeah.
want some. But that didn't even work as well as the mix, because the salt would just eat through and,
Yeah. It depends what you're looking for. I mean, if you need traction on thin ice, if you have thin ice, it works. Sand works, but if you just want to melt it, you got to use salt. You know,
but
salt.
the mix seems to work out well, because it eats into the ice.
It does.
And leaves
It'll
the,
give you the traction you want.
right.
It won't melt the ice.
I don't care, as
So-
long as I can make it up the driveway.
Yeah, I get that. But what's happened is, because of stormwater, that big thing, stormwater, the MS4 permit, to put sand on a road is putting phosphorus on the road. The phosphorus is in the sand. So we have to clean that now. We have to get the sand off the road. We need to sweep the town twice a year. The cost to sweep the town twice a year is more money to do than just use more salt and less sand. You see what I'm saying? So it's costing us $50,000-$60,000 a year just to take that material away. That's considered hazardous material now. That has to be trucked away. That's another thing that's changed over the years. We no longer say you need sand in your backyard, you need fill in your backyard. Back in the olden days, they used to dump it all over the
Right.
place. I remember dumping it for, previous administration. And we can't do that. That's against the law. You absolutely cannot do that. So you have to haul that out away. It has to go to a landfill, a certified landfill. Like I said, this year, $65,000 it cost us.
Can't just give it to Rhode Island and,
We actually gave it to Hopedale. It's in the Hopedale landfill. They took it. So things have changed. It's not the same old highway
Well,
department.
you did something that I'll never forgive you for, because I always thought, oh, look how beautiful the snow is, 5 inches, 6 inches. And then when you brought your budget in and you told me how much it cost per inch, all of a sudden I'm looking at the snowstorm saying, oh, 60 grand. It's no longer that pretty snow, it's 50
Yeah.
grand. What does it cost per inch on average?
Our goal is always 10 to 11,000. And that's also depends on storms. You get ice storms, it gets expensive. To constantly treat roads. in
Well,
a
ice
nice-
is worse than snow, isn't
way
it?
worse. You're scraping your treat and you're scraping your treat and you just can't keep up with it. What I call the marbles, the sleet, I call it marbles because that's what it reminds me of. You hit that, you slide on it. That's the worst. That does not melt. It builds up faster than you could possibly melt it. And so it's a balance between scraping the roads and salting them, and you use a lot of material, absolutely, and it gets very expensive. So if you have a winter that's all ice, it's an expensive winter. So you'll get $13, $14 an inch. I mean, 14,000 an inch. So it is variable,
Like
but
I
you don't want to
say,
get much higher than that.
I,
You
kn-
shouldn't
I
have
look
to.
out and say, oh, 50 grand, or 60 grand on this snowstorm.
Yeah,
It used to be pretty snow. Now it's, Scotty's going to
yeah.
spend.
But if you have a half inch of ice, that's as much as having 5 inches of snow.
Oh.
You see what I'm saying? So you lose on the inches there. So it's not the best measurement of it. It's just an idea.
No, but it gives you an idea that we put away X number of dollars. Even if we put $500,000 away,
Mhm.
you sit there and say, okay, 50 inches later,
Yeah.
it's gone.
Right.
Yeah.
But
But compared to, I go down to the barn, take my little 5-gallon buckets, fill it with the mix. I always thought if I have to do my driveway, I go in a Safeway or Shaw's, take the $5 little bag.
Yep.
I'd go broke.
Right. I mean, we buy so much salt in bulk. We buy anywhere between 4,000 and 7,000 ton a year. That's what we purchase.
I guess you won't notice my 5-gallon bucket.
Not at all. No. No, and you know something, we put that outside the gate so residents could get to it and not get run over by a front end loader because it's very dangerous in there. We're out stocking and loading and mixing.
That's when I used to drive my car in.
Yeah.
They tried explaining to me that my car is so small that the front end loader could just nail
Yeah.
it without noticing.
Yeah. And then we take that bin in the summer, we change it over to compost. So it works two things.
The other popular program is leaves.
Yeah.
Now, what's it, 5 weeks?
5 weeks. That's how it's set up. It's based on the same as the trash pickup.
Because I remember when I was week 1 a while back, I looked up, I took my 2 leaves.
You do this every time.
I walked down to the driveway with my 2 leaves.
Oh, yeah.
Or the time your guys came a week early.
Mhm.
I guess they were trying to get ahead. My mother's out there. She comes over with a broom. That's Scotty. I'm going to get him with my broom. They came too early. We still have leaves.
Yeah.
Can you ever win this game?
There's good and bad. There's good years and there's bad years. There's years we whip right through it in quicker than 5 weeks. You need the weather. And I can tell you right now, the last 6 or 7 years, we have not had dry weather in the fall. It is non-stop rain. This year, 15 inches of snow in the third route. I mean, that put us on hold. We're done. We stopped. We stopped for a week and a half. It melted, and like we wanted it to. And we continued. We finished. We did the whole town. We did everything. We didn't miss a pile.
Now, we used to buy those great big, I used to call them sewer trucks, the heavy
Vacs.
duty
Yeah.
to pick up leaves. But the last time, if I remember, you went to a more efficient.
Much
Awesome.
more. Much more. So we bought leaf pickers that are actually leaf vacuums. They actually are designed for that. Trucks we had before weren't quite designed for that. We fixed them or made them so they could do it. But they were very slow and cumbersome. We still have one. I think it's time to let it go, though. The trucks we bought, like I said, they're designed to pick leaves. They're twice as fast. They grind the leaves. They carry twice as much. So way more efficient. One-man operation instead of 2 guys on a truck. So it helped us in that end with employees. And when I designed these trucks, we knew what we wanted for the lease vac, but I wasn't willing to go buy a brand spanking new truck and spend $100 to $120 on a cab and chassis to put this on. And we need a right-hand drive vehicle. We couldn't use the typical left-hand drive vehicle. You need a right-hand drive because you work off the right of the truck and you're running the vacuum and driving the truck at the same time.
So, besides England, where are you going to get one of those?
Street sweepers.
They make them?
They're right-hand drive, yeah. All street sweepers are right-hand drive because you're on the right-hand gutter. You got to see the gutter. So we found 2 of the exact same trucks. We got lucky. They were 2005 sweepers, retired. When you retire a sweeper, your truck has 20, 25,000 miles on it. The sweeper itself is no good anymore. That's why they retire them. So we found one and cleaned it up, fixed everything we had to do, painted it, made it look brand spanking new. We were into each truck. One truck we were into, I think, $22,000, the other one $30,000. And again, we only put 3,000 or 4,000 miles a year on them. We didn't need new trucks. We absolutely did. There was no reason to buy a new truck. So we bought the 2 used ones, designed them, had them all set up, and both trucks were built under $100,000. So that
Sure
alone
beats
was
the
huge
250
savings.
that.
The original trucks were $175,000 a piece. That was 20 years ago. Imagine what they'd be today.
No, I remember when you first came to us, you said it would be at least $250 a truck.
Yeah.
But I mean, realistically, would you ever think of doing away with the LEAF program?
Never. No. I like it myself as a resident of town. You know. I don't even know if there's any other ways to do it any better. I think, you know, someday we may purchase a 3rd vacuum to have, because when you have breakdowns, that throws you off. All of a sudden you got 1 truck instead of 2 trucks, and it happens. They break down. You know, they run full
Well,
throttle
when
all
you get
day.
near one to retire, you get the new one, and then you get the backup.
Yeah, we're in the middle of setting up a truck that will be able to slide that on there when we need it and take it off, or slide a dumpster or a sander or whatever we want to put on it, a hook lift truck, right-hand drive now, because we need a right-hand drive to do this. So we actually have a truck that we can use. So we're going to reuse the truck we have. So always thinking of new things, always trying to make it better and more efficient, any which way we can. You know, it's just not, you know, it's not a perfect world with leaf pickup with weather. The weather is the biggest killer. Rain just takes what you can do in one day and cuts it right in half. So it's a no-win there.
So now, question people always have: when you're going to repave my street? How do you decide?
Well,
what
right now
streets?
we actually have a asset management plan that I had started a few years ago. I have my own in-house GIS, because you remember the whole GIS thing we went through. I've managed to do it in-house with people's GIS, where we have all our roads are measured, they are graded, they are marked accordingly by color, I can go online and do everything I used to have to drive around all day and figure out. I can just go right on the computer and do it. Best thing we ever did. So that's number one. So if your road's red, that means we're looking at it, we're ready to go. We are got to get that road completed. And it's not the old worst first. I'd like to wish we could do it that way, but it's not that way, unfortunately. There's always utilities.
Well, you had Congress Street or Water Street that you were ready to go for how long, and you were waiting?
Waiting for the gas company. They're the biggest holdup usually. Right now, I actually am letting them work on West Spruce Street because that was something we wanted to do in the fall, early fall. We couldn't get to it. We just couldn't. And I had residents there that were asking me constantly, and I'm like, we're trying, we are. The gas company had work to do there. They had a main to repair. They actually did it last week. We let them in there in the middle of winter. The weather's good. They can get it done, so I can get the road done first thing in the spring. That's what we want to do. So it's usually the gas company. The gas company, actually, we had a meeting the other day, and they have a lot of work to do in this town, a lot. So we're kind of working together with them now to try to get things done, together. We have to, because we can't we can't do roads and then have them come in and say, well, we got to do the main over. We don't want that.
Then you lose the road.
And I don't really want to hold them up on fixing something that needs to be fixed, because you're talking gas. You know what can happen with that. We've seen it. So we have to get that stuff done. So utilities is usually the actual determining factor when we can do the road.
But now you talk about if your road is red. Where do people get to see what roads?
Well, that's not quite public yet.
I was going to say, because you can look and
If
say.
they want to come down to my office, I can show it to them. But I wouldn't, I don't think that's, besides that, we have all our street signs are on there, our line paintings on there. So we know everything in town. If you call and set of signs down in the corner, I go right on, bang, I can see the sign. We have a picture of the sign on there. So it's just all streamlining and making things easier and not having to have people driving around looking at things all day long. We have it in front of us. So, those are upgrades that we've had to do to basically keep up with technology.
So now, if I remember right, funding is usually the gate limiting attribute. Because how much does it cost to do a piece of road?
Well, depending on what you're doing, there's all different options. I mean, it can go from $4 a square yard to $17, $18 a square yard. You don't want to have to, I mean, we've talked about this many times, but we don't want to have to completely grind your road and do full depth reclamation, start from scratch. That's an expensive, long process. There's no, last year, all the roads we did had sidewalks, both sides. They had drainage we had to put in, sub-drain. All the basins, everything had to be changed and rebuilt. I mean, by the time we grinded that road and did all that work, you're talking 2.5, 3 months worth of work, and it takes that much time. And then you got to put everything back, and then loom the edges of the road and plant grass, and it's a long project. But that's what you don't want to have to do. Yes, we do have to do that on a lot of roads, and the expense of that is just crazy. Without the sidewalks, it's about $18 a square yard.
Yeah, but what does that mean?
That means hundreds of thousands of dollars.
Okay, I was going to say, when you say a square yard,
It's 3 by 3.
people think of a mile, half a mile. They don't think of, I'm going to
Square yard.
drive 48 square yards worth of.
Well, I mean, if you know what a square yard is, I mean, so it's not much for that much money. But then I'm a huge fan of trying new technology, and we have done a lot of different things. Some work, some I like better than others, some I won't ever use again. But it's worth trying sometimes to lower the cost of what we have to do and get the same result at the end of the day. So I'll give you an example. We did Route 109 last year, Medway Road, 4 lanes wide, almost a mile. To do full depth reclamation on that road, you're talking $1.5 million.
For 1 mile.
Yeah. To mill and fill is what they call it. You mill down 1.5 inches and you pave 1.5 inches. Not expensive. That would have been a couple $100,000. But you only get what you do. So when I say that, I mean, you take off 1.5 inches of the top that's bad. What about the stuff underneath? Because that's going to reflect back up through the top again. So if you have cracking underneath that 1.5 inches, it's in a year you're going to have cracking again. So you're kind of wasting your time with that. It's a quick fix and it's inexpensive, but it's not a good fix. And again, there's a place for that. So we tried something last year. It's called cold in place recycling. That road is 10 inches thick, which is way beyond what your average road is. Why it's that thick, I do not know. It's maybe the age of it, maybe that when the state originally did that road, they made it that thick, I'm unsure. So with a cold in place recycling, you can actually grind down to the 10 inches, right to the gravel, and not touch the gravel. So you're not touching the actual base. Recycle all that material, lay it back down. And
So it's the same material you're scooping up, you're just treating it and then putting it
they
back?
treat it with a rejuvenator. They won't tell you what that chemical makeup is. Of course, it's theirs. They own it. And they'll add other ingredients in it. And they remix it. They lay it back down. The only downfall to that is the finished product. When they're done with that, you cannot leave like that. You have to cover it. So in a case like Medway Road, we recovered it with 1.5 inches of hot top. So basically, we got 10 inches of rebuilt hot top with a brand new top on it at half the price of doing the whole
How
road.
long would you expect that to last?
20 years. 20 years
Oh,
is
really?
the average, yeah. I mean, we'll, obviously, when I say 20 years, before you start saying, oh, we're getting potholes, we're getting cracking, it's getting rough, and then we go 25 years. We stretch as long as we can, obviously, we have to, we have no choice, especially a road that size. So we were into that for about $400,000 at the end of the day.
Better than $1 million.
And it is a newer process in Massachusetts. It's being used a lot. Mass DOT has inherited it now. They use it. So if Mass DOT uses it, that means it's can be paid for by Chapter 90. It's one of their processes. They think it's a good process. So we tried it. So far, so good. And now we're looking at, it's been 2 years, so now we're looking at Cedar Street. We may be doing something with that. Same situation, long road, big money. And, we get $500,000 from the town, $800,000 to $900,000 from Chapter 90, that's it. So if we have to spend all that on one road, we don't want to do that. We need to spread it out, obviously. So
How many miles of road do we have?
we have about 120 miles. That's usually what we would call 240 lane miles of road.
Because of 2 lanes.
Yeah, you do it by lane mile. That's your typical measurement.
And you talk about sidewalks on either side.
Mm-hmm.
Is that long gone? I mean,
Yeah, again, MS4 permit, they don't want 2 sidewalks. They want permeable surfaces. They don't want, it's 2 sidewalks. That's a little bit more the water's gonna sit on, run back in the road and run down. They want it to infiltrate in the ground. So we changed the planning and engineering end of it, and so when someone designs a subdivision, it's 1 sidewalk. And, we've talked about when we do roads over to eliminate a sidewalk, but residents who have a sidewalk in front of the house, it would be the right thing to do, but from the
Scotty
resident's
took my, I
point
can
of
see
view,
my
it's
mother out
not.
there with her broom
No.
saying, Scotty took my
No,
sidewalk.
and then how do you decide which one? Do we want to take this one or this one? Which one do we do, And we've teetered on that for so long. It is the right thing to do for stormwater. It actually gives us stormwater points at the end of the year. But when we do our report, you need this stuff in there. It's part of it. So, but we haven't done that yet. No, we haven't eliminated a sidewalk.
You better buy armored personnel carriers if you're going to take
No,
away
I know.
some of
Kids
the old
walking to
grandma.
school, and it's the whole thing. I get it. We can't just barge in there and take out your sidewalk and say, see ya. We wouldn't do that.
Now, when you talk about plowing in school, I mean, most people don't understand, they think it's Kevin that decides whether the kids are going to school or not. But it's really you.
Well, Kevin is, we've worked for a couple different superintendents, so everyone has done a little different. Kevin's a little more cautious. The way we deal he deals with us is we tell him where we're at. We tell him what we can have done. Ultimately, it is his decision.
Well, but
ultimately, so.
if you say, I can't plow the sidewalks, then
Yeah,
it's going to be rare that Kevin says, oh, we'll put the kids in the middle of the road during the storm.
No, they do have that thing. They pick up every student. I'm not exactly sure how that works. I've talked to Lenny about it many times, but they don't utilize that a lot.
The kids get to school, by the time they get there, it's time to pack up and go home.
What works a lot is a delay. He's good
Yeah.
with the delays. That works. So sometimes we need that extra hour to make it look better. It's a scramble in the morning. It is. We get 4 o'clock in the morning. We have to kind of decide if we're going to make it or we're not, as far as what we can do. It depends on the storm.
Now, you got those cute little bombardier things, right?
The big expensive things?
They're the big expensive ones.
Cost more than trucks.
But you have special bombardier tractors and snow blowers just for the sidewalk.
Mm-hmm. We have 4 of them. We have 3 routes. We have 4 tractors. We keep 4 because one always breaks down. That's a given. That's just automatic. Every storm they break down. They're very expensive and they're very sensitive. So we run 3 of them. Now all 3 of the ones we have snow blowers, which is huge help. You get a huge snowstorm, they plow through that with a snow plow. You can't do it.
Well, where do you put it?
You can't push it. It's too much. So in the olden days, we just never did them. Ultimately, though, and a lot of residents don't understand that they are responsible for their own sidewalk.
Yeah, but nobody believes it.
It's a bylaw.
It's a law, and you're supposed to do your own sidewalk.
We
But-
don't. It's never been enforced. It's never been
Right.
enforced the 30 years I've been here. And we do plow sidewalks. We plow the main sidewalks that are needed for children to go to school, the main ones.
And that's what I think people have to understand. We do the sidewalks because of the kids.
Yes, absolutely.
They are kids. If the sidewalk isn't plowed, they're going to run out in the middle of the street.
Yeah, no, it's safety. It's safety. Number one, safety. You know, it's just it's what we do. It's safety, public safety.
So now, all that snow melts, and now we have stormwater to deal with. Now,
Yeah.
I mean, you obviously, it's always directed at you. They yell at us at the FinCom for funding it. But what is it this year? It was 400 last year?
This year, I don't think we're going to go for funding. We don't need to this year. Possibly the next year. We started out with over like $1.7 million, I think, originally, 6-7 years ago when we started talking about this new permit. We've brought that down. We're down to $1.5 million now, but even that might be steep. But I think we've raised 800 so far. I think we've probably spent around $250 of that so far in the last year. We just signed another contract with Environmental Partners to start a lot of our outreach and education and testing.
Now, I'm going to be mean, but I listen to people scream, do we have to spend this money? And I'm not sure how well educated they are on the topic, but they seem to imply that we don't have to do this stormwater management. What's your
do
opinion?
have to do stormwater management. That's not even a question at this point. The EPA mandated we do it. So until they say we don't have to do it, we have to do it. We are told to go forward. If they change their mind, then we can stop. But until then, we cannot.
Is
this
it the same for all the towns around?
I think it is now. Originally, we were the guinea pigs, Franklin,
Right.
Milford, Bellingham, because we're on the Charles River. The Charles River watershed is #1 in the state. We are the beginning of it. The pollution comes from us. The phosphorus load that we put in the water is a lot greater than anybody else, supposedly. Again, you know, it's science. It's all numbers. That's 90% of what it is. And we fought it for years, right back to Mike Santoro. We fought it with him. He tried everything in his power to ask the question, ask why we got to do this. But they want it done.
But they came in and started throwing numbers like $80 million and
That's where we started, yeah. And now the new permit finally came out with all the questioning we did, all the lawsuits, the arguing with the EPA and the DEP, and all this stuff we did. They loosened up the regulation. So we are at the amount of phosphorus we need to take out of the water has been cut in half from what they originally wanted. They wanted it all out at one time. We have 30. They figure Milford puts about 3,500 pounds of phosphorus in the Charles River every year. Doesn't sound like a lot, does it? But you're talking something we can't see. Dust, smaller than dust. So the original, when they started talking about the Phase 2 MS4 permit, they wanted us to remove it all. That's why you were talking $80 million. To actually get to that point, that's what they figured it was going
now,
to cost
doesn't
us.
most of it come from fertilizer and?
Comes from car exhaust, fertilizer, it's in the leaves in the trees, it's everywhere. It's everything. So going
Yeah,
back
but
to
we
leaves
can't-
for a second,
We can't control the leaves, can we?
we can pick them up though. That's part of stormwater now. So we
Oh.
own that. That's another reason we will never get rid of it. We own it. You can't stop it now. We would actually lose points towards our final report. So the way stormwater's been set up now is they give you 5 years. So we had to do a notice of intent at the very beginning. We did that in 2018. 2019, July last year, we had to have our stormwater plan. How are we going to start this out? What are we going to do for the next 5 years? And then it's not the next 5 years that's so important. It's the 6 through 20 years where we have to implement everything we decide as a town we are going to do. So this first 5 years is very important because we have to have a plan this is what we're going to do in the next 6 to 20 years. we have to have things designed. We have, when I say things, BMPs, they call them wetlands. So there's structural and there's non-structural. Non-structural is what we're doing in this next 5 years. That's the planning. That's the education. That's the public outreach, testing, outfall testing, dry weather testing, wet weather testing. It's just a list of stuff that goes on and on and on that we have to accomplish in 5 years. At the end of this 5 years, we will tell the EPA that this is how we're going to remove, we have to remove 1,250 ton, somewhere around, I don't know the exact number, 1,250 ton of phosphorus in 20 years, every year for 20 years. That's our goal. But we have to tell them how we're going to do that. And this is new territory for everybody, including the town of Milford. We have estimates. We know it costs $46,000 per pound to remove phosphorus.
But how do you remove phosphorus? You're not doing an extraction.
No, the only way to remove it is infiltrate water through the ground. So they call it the 1-inch flush. So when you get a rainstorm, the first 1 inch of water is the dirty water. Anything after that, the roads are clean. It's already been cleaned. So you need to catch that first 1 inch of water. That needs to infiltrate into the ground. That removes the phosphorus. You'll have a big wetland full of phosphorus, but you won't have it in the rivers.
Is that what that big ditch down on Dilla Street is supposed to
Yes.
do?
So that is a stormwater wetland. That's designed to take all the water from Congress Street that comes down Fountain Street and runs into the river right there at the bridge. Now that's been bypassed. That now runs into that wetland. Takes that first inch of water, and with all the, numbers and the figuring, they figure out how high that water has to go before it runs out of that wetland. And when the water that runs out of that wetland is clean water. Runs out of the wetland and runs back into the river.
But when the phosphorus settles, doesn't it eventually go down to the aquifer and?
It stays clean in the aquifer. It doesn't come out of the aquifer, it stays there.
Huh.
What happens to the phosphorus when it goes in the ground? That's a question I've always had. Does it overwhelm the ground with phosphorus right there? Does it have to be dug out and cleaned someday? Do we have to change the soil? I don't know. Those are questions we ask. We can't get answers to that stuff.
I'm thinking of, what you call the wetland reservoir, I call the big ditch.
Mm-hmm.
I look at it and I say, okay, I got stagnant water. Isn't that what they yell at us not to have for mosquitoes?
Yeah, for mosquitoes. But at the end of the day, what phosphorus does is it creates algae blooms, and that kills fish. So I'll give you a perfect example of a place that fish can't live. And I'm not picking on Hopedale, but the backside of Hopedale, Laurelwood condominiums, there's a pond there between the condominiums and the road. Go there in the middle of summer. It is green. It's covered with algae. It kills the fish. They cannot live there. There's no oxygen.
No oxygen for them to
Exactly.
breathe.
And that's what phosphorus does. So why there's phosphorus in it? It could be a number of reasons, anything from septic systems to phosphorus just getting in there from the road, out of the sand. Because all septic systems cause phosphorus. Sewerage causes phosphorus. So
Tell me about the highway barn. We hear about the Taj Mascotti being looked at.
it's not really out of want, it's out of need. Something has to give eventually because our doors are breaking down. I mean, we don't have room for the parks department and our equipment anymore. We don't have the facility to handle just the employment there. It's overwhelmed. That aside,
Benny's
we
going to
live
get
with
mad
that.
at me, but isn't Benny getting old?
Well, whatever route the town decides to take. I mean, the building's old. It needs help. It needs work. I just replaced another garage door this year. Every year, 2 or 3 garage doors, or 1, whatever. It depends. They're breaking down like mad. It's getting old. The heating system's getting old. The roof's not leaking, knock on wood. I probably shouldn't say anything about a roof because I don't want it to leak, but everything in the building is
I haven't heard anybody that's reasonable. You always get the people that say, you don't need any maintenance, you don't need, save the money. Yeah, okay. If you look, I haven't heard anybody say that it looks like you got too much room and not enough to put in it. Because they look outside and they see valuable trucks and gear rusting.
Yeah, I hate it. I
think
don't like it outside.
The issue that keeps coming up is you got a business right behind you
Mhm.
that seems ideal. Because, I mean, if you could shut off Pond Street, all of a sudden you'd have a nice island of just town of Milford. I can't use
It
those
would
words.
be a really nice facility.
I say, can't use the words DPU, but why not press and build a common area for highway, parks?
Absolutely should do that. I agree. Vulnerability is one of the biggest issues there. We did a study in the town. It was a grant that we got through the state, and that is one of the most vulnerable places town-owned that we have because it's on that Charles River. And you say, oh, well, it's just a river, but we have 3 dams upriver of that, 3. One of those gives way, we're all done. If it ever happened, not saying, it probably never happened, we have the reservoir. That reservoir holds a lot of water. That's all coming right to the highway department if we ever had a problem there. That place will not be there anymore.
Well, I mean, I think a lot of us worry more about things like you've got steel tanks in the ground.
That's my immediate issue. Charles River, 20 feet away from 2 10,000-gallon fuel tanks. That Charles River has a wall that is made out of rocks that was built 100 years ago, and there's no concrete, no cement, no mortar, nothing holding that wall up. A big enough rainstorm can take that wall out of there, and if that happens, we'll be following those tanks down the river.
But you know, I hate to say it because I'll appear ignorant, but I worry less about a catastrophic failure than I worry about a little teeny hole in the steel tanks.
Well, we have, those tanks are they're top end when they're put in. There's the, they call it the space between the tanks. I can't think of the name of it. But that space is monitored by computer systems and sensors.
So if you
and
get a
everything
little
else.
hole.
Yeah, we will know right away.
But if
I
you
hope. I mean, we hope we know. I mean, if we don't know.
But I mean, realistically, even if you have the dual wall
Yeah.
and the sensors go off and say you have a leak, it's not like you're going down there with silly putty to plug the hole.
No, we're gonna have to suck the tanks dry, whatever tank's leaking. Take all the fuel out immediately, and then deal with
Because
it.
otherwise, you're going to have 10,000
And
gallons
then,
going everywhere.
You know, you're gonna deal with that, and you're gonna spend $500,000-$600,000 by the time you're done just fixing that one repair, pulling a tank, the environmental cleanup. So that is an immediate problem that I think we should deal with, and we just need to start thinking about it. We do. Those tanks need to be taken out, whatever, moved, relocated, whether it's on higher ground, above ground tanks, however we decide to do it, it should be done.
Is it worth us keeping our own tanks?
I think so. Yeah, I mean, we buy fuel at a fraction of.
No, I'm just wondering, you know, do you cut a deal with a local gas station or something?
I don't think they can sell the fuel and stuff for what we pay for it.
Oh,
I think
okay.
we pay $1.60 for diesel fuel. Yeah, we don't pay a lot for it. It's tax-free.
Oh, that's why.
Yeah.
I was going to say,
Yeah.
$1.60.
So everything's tax-free for us, so it's definitely worth having our own tanks. I know the fire department has, they have 4,000 gallons, I think. We could even locate tanks there if we had to. It's nice to have them on the property because we're in and out during snowstorms all night. You know, if you need fuel, you're right there.
Where are the fire?
that's-
Are they down on Birch Street?
Yeah, the tanks are right behind their building.
That would be a pain in the...
It is kind of, yeah.
And I'm not even saying a pain, but in the middle of a snowstorm,
Mm-hmm.
you're going to take one of your big toy trucks,
Have to drive all the way down.
have to drive. This is not a 5-minute drive.
No, it's a waste. It's a lot of time. It's a waste of time, definitely. You know, so that's something we have to start thinking about. We definitely have to. And you know, who's ever put gas in your car or fuel in your truck and not spilled a couple drops of fuel?
Yeah.
And it rains. Where's that go? Right into the Charles River. It's constant. You know, it's pollution. We have to think about that. We have to be aware of that. And I think it's time before something happens. We don't. I think the cost of something happens is 10 times greater than what the cost is to fix it now. And it's been brought up in the studies we've done, and it's definitely something we need to think about.
Well, as I say, I don't think anybody has ever really rationally argued that you have too much space, and
No.
or said that leaving expensive pieces of gear out all winter is a good idea.
You take so many years of life off equipment leaving it outside. It's just like your own car. You know, if you leave it outside, it's not going to last as long as the car you leave in the garage. It's not.
Yeah, but my car doesn't cost $180,000.
Right, and we have very expensive equipment. So, and it brings up issues like if you're leaving a truck outside and you have to come in for a snowstorm and it's midnight and you go to start that truck, it doesn't start. Now we got to tie up mechanics trying to get that truck started. That's a route that's not getting covered. You know what I mean? It's an employee that's sitting around waiting to drive his truck, nothing to do. I'm going to make him sweep the floor, do something different, but he's there to work. You know, he wants to get in his truck and go. And I have to have other trucks come off routes to cover that route. It causes a nightmare, and it happens a lot. Back in the day, when I started here, we had trucks outside, and we built that other storage building to get them inside, and that building's full now, unfortunately, but it's just the way it is.
Now, up by Asylum Street, there's activity from your department. What's going on?
Okay, so you'll be reading the newspaper. I actually was supposed to be at a meeting tonight, but the highway department will be taking over the transfer station. The Board of Health has asked us to do that. It's been discussed for about a year now, and I think it's time it's going to happen. They don't want to be bothered with it. They have their own stuff to do. It's not really what they do. They use us for, you know, anything machine-wise or anything plow-wise, anything we have to go down there constantly. So Jackie has been discussing it with me, and she feels it's time to move forward. The board feels it's time to move forward. That being said, it'll happen gradually, probably in the next couple of months. The transfer station itself will stay where it is for now. It'll operate the way it's been operating. The ultimate goal is to have that transfer station at our Asylum Street location with the leaf dump and the brush dump to make it a more usable space. I mean, right now the transfer station is really not a good setup. It's not really designed. I mean,
Well,
if you see some of the transfer stations that I've been in,
when you
it's
see the
just
people
crazy.
backing up and
Traffic and
the
it's just a
traffic
very
and-
bad spot. So that's the ultimate goal that I have as a highway surveyor. I would like to see the transfer station up there, completely run up there. You know, a place that can be open more rather than a couple days a week. Let's open it all week. You know what I mean? More service. You know, the next step is to, because we are the highway department, because we have trucks and we can do certain things, we can do all the hauling. There's no more trucking charges when we do things. We save money. I'm not going to get into curbside pickup yet, but that will probably be a future thing also that we would take over.
I
Because,
mean, like our sofas and...
well, just curbside pickup, trash.
Oh, you
recycling.
mean trash itself?
From the studying I've been doing on it, and the towns I've talked to, and the cities that do it themselves, this is a huge savings for us to do it ourselves. It's not, the trucking alone is, for Milford, is $1.5 million. Just the trucking, not the dumping fees or the tipping fees, but the trucking alone is $1.5 million. Why are we spending $1.5 million on that? We don't need to. 2 employees and 2 trucks. Even if it's 4 employees and 2 trucks, it's still not even a couple $100,000. Why are we spending $1.5 million? We don't need to. So I think you might see that down the road. If it's something feasible and it's something that works out and we can do it, I think it's worth doing, absolutely. You know? And, you know, there's a reason why towns like Framingham do that. There's a reason. There's money to be saved.
Does it seem ironic that we did everything in the world to keep people from dumping stuff on Asylum Street late at night, and now we're moving everything to Asylum
Oh,
Street?
hopefully they won't dump there anymore. No, it's we pick trash in there, you know, once a month. And I drove down there this morning. There's Christmas trees, there's bottles, and I don't get it. I really don't get it. I don't understand people throwing trash out their windows. I'll never understand that. People actually pull over and dump their cars out there. They dump truckloads of stuff there sometimes. Computers. Remember we had the whole computer incident? There was hundreds of computers. I don't get it. I really don't understand how someone doesn't care about their environment that much. You know, even the trash around town is nonstop. I've never seen it like this. In all the years I've been there, it's just, we can pick papers once a week. We don't have the time to do that. We have other stuff to do. You know, we get the prisoners in there, I shouldn't say prisoners, but the inmates in there, and we have them do it as much as we can get them. But you can't have them all the time, unfortunately. And we use our part-time guys to do, our full-time guys do it when there's nothing going on.
Well, you were also clearing brush, right? You bought that big octopus thing?
No, we didn't buy that. You forget about that, don't we? Didn't buy it. So we're cutting it like this and like this. But it has to be about efficiency. Unless we're going to hire more employees, we need to do the best we can with the employees we have. So when you purchase equipment, you need to have equipment that can do more than one thing. That's always my goal.
Well, that's why it's hard when people say a $30,000 lawnmower. They don't see all the octopus arms and...
Right, I mean, you can buy a $1,000 lawnmower with a 40-inch cutting width, or you buy an expensive one that can cut 5 feet at a time. you know, and save you the time to do it, and the employees. And the wear and tear on the machine itself.
But you're starting to share equipment with the Parks Department. I kid you about you buying something they have. But, you know, when we talked about the multi-use cutter, they needed it in the spring, you needed it in the fall. Just made all the sense in the world to just
It
have
does.
one of you buy it.
It does. There's no reason to have two machines. You know, whether we're going to try to do that this year again, I don't even know where that's at. I haven't really discussed it. But so the problem with all this equipment, the more equipment you have, the more repairs you have. So when you said, you know, what do you see for the Taj Mahal, Scotty? What I see is a central maintenance division for this town. When I say, I mean central for everybody, police, fire, highway, parks, cemetery, whoever needs a vehicle fixed should be done in our facility.
Well, see, that's what I love about having the Pond Street Annex, or whatever you want to call it, is that you could have mechanics set up.
Yeah.
You can have all the tools, everything you need.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that would be a definite goal, no matter where it is or what it is. We need to do that. We need to utilize our own personnel to do things. Not that I can do it with two mechanics, I can't. But again, you know, would you rather pay the repair shop 85 bucks an hour for a car, or $125 an hour for a truck, or $150 for a loader? You know what I mean? Why don't we just pay an employee to do it and give someone a job?
On that note, Scotty, I'm from Milford. Why should I vote for you?
A few things I mentioned. I'm a committed person to this town. I'm committed to my job. I'm committed to the residents of this town. Accountability, like I said, always number one. There's no not being accountable for everything that we do as a department, that I do as an official, always. I'm always accomplishment driven. You know, the more accomplishments I can do, the more I want to do. The more I can bring to this town, the more I can bring to the residents, the more I want to do. You know, it's all about that. I'm a resident, you're a resident, my parents are residents. I hear, I listen, I see, always. And just my integrity, you know, I'm here for everybody at any time, and it's always going to be that way as long as I'm here. So I just think, you know, where we are as a town and a town highway department and where we were 30 years ago when I started is two different worlds. And I've grown in that world from the start to now. And I feel I've done, you know, very well with it. And I plan on doing more, obviously.
As always, thank you for taking the time to listen. No matter how you get the information, it's critical that you pick somebody, highway, selectman, school, to pick somebody that you believe is like you, has your values, and will best represent you. So as always, to our 6 loyal viewers, may God bless, may tomorrow be a better night than tonight. E para os avós que estão todos no Senior Center, boa noite.
Not too long since I've been home. Been running all my life just